Okay, we'll go ahead and call Fed and State Committee to order, February 9th, Wednesday. First thing on the agenda, do we have bill introductions? Do we have any bill introduction? Oh, Senator Fascodo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a bill introduction, and I turned the information in to your assistant, Michael. The RS number is 3081, and it is a bill concerning a display and murals designating Capital Preservation Committee to develop and approve plans for a mural honoring the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry Regiment here in the state capitol.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Do we have any objections? Not seeing any. The bill's introduced. Any further bill introductions? Okay. Do you have someone you want to recognize, Senator Fascodo?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, I had a really bad night last night. I lost my keys here in the Capitol, and the security helped look for about an hour and a half and still couldn't find it. And so I did find my keys, but I'm really excited and happy this morning because your Vice Chair, Senator Hildebrand, just told me that he moved a bill out of committee that I've worked on for a long time. So thank you for that, Senator Hildebrand. I do have a guest in the audience with me. First, ladies first, if the two ladies that are here today from Wichita would just stand and introduce themselves real quick. Thank you, Ann. Thank you. And then my intern, Joanna Marks, I keep forgetting to acknowledge her. Mr. Chairman just walked in the door today. And then it's an honor to have Larry Burks of Wichita, if he would just stand. He is a veteran, and he is also the president of the Wichita NAACP. Mr. Burks, thank you for being here. And then I have Reverend Kirkendall in the audience with us, and he is the president of the Wichita Ministerial League, about 200 members in your ministerial league there. Reverend, I wanted to call you Carl, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you. And then lastly, I have in the red shirt there, I have Pastor Robert Johnson, pastor of about 1,500 members there in Wichita United Methodist Church. Is that correct? Thank you for being here, and thank you for your prayers. And if you guys have to leave out, I know it's some other activities going on. I'll see you later. Thank you so kindly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming. We'll go ahead then and move on to our hearing. We'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 369. Jason, do you want to give us an overview on 369?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 369 would enact the Kansas Affordable Housing Tax Credit Act. This would be another tax credit for housing development. This particular act is essentially a state enactment of the federal low-income housing tax credit statutes that are current law under federal income tax code. And so many of the definitions and terms you will see match up with the federal program for providing tax credits for development of low-income housing. For instance, the definitions of a qualified taxpayer would be any individual or entity that owns an interest in a qualified development, and the qualified development is defined under federal law as a qualified low-income housing project. Those are residential rental properties that meet one of the 3 resident income tests for a low income. There's a 2050 test, a 4060 test, or an average income test as specified in the federal law. The amount of the tax credit would be determined by the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, which would be administering this tax credit program, and it would be determined in accordance with federal tax credit provisions. Federal statute calculates the amount at either 70% or 30%, depending on the type of building of the qualified basis for the qualified low-income housing building. So that would be a calculation done by KHRC. The tax credit can be carried forward by the taxpayer for up to 11 years if there's insufficient tax liability. It could be used to offset tax liability for income tax, privilege tax, or a premium tax for insurance companies under state law. No portion of the tax credit is refundable. And if any portion is recaptured or otherwise disallowed under the federal tax credit, then that same amount would be disallowed for state tax credit purposes. I will point out there is no aggregate annual limit to the amount of tax credit benefits that can be allocated by KHRC under this program. The bill does direct KHRC to monitor and oversee compliance with the Act and report any noncompliance to the Director of Taxation. And then additionally, there's an annual report by December 31st of each year to the Legislature on the number of qualified developments for which tax credits have been allocated, and then some details on the geographic and demographic information of those developments, and other housing market information that demonstrates how the Act is addressing the need for affordable housing in the state of Kansas. If enacted, the bill will go into effect on July 1st of this year. I did note, I didn't mention it, but this would be beginning for tax years 2023. So there would be that delay in terms of full implementation until January 1st of 2023. I'll stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for Jason? Did a great job, Jason. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with the proponents. Alex Johnson.
Hello. Yep. You did do a good job describing the program. Thank you. Chairman Olson and members of the committee, my name is Alex Johnson. I'm here testifying in support of Senate Bill 369 on behalf of Advantage Capital. I'd like to talk to you about affordable housing, and it's an issue that I've worked on across the country. It's an issue almost in every state. In Kansas in particular, fully 25% of all renters pay more than 50% of their monthly income in rent. Kansas is surrounded by other states that have a state LIHTC program, and so it's a program that's sort of time-tested and also regionally popular in the Midwest. As many of you know, the costs of building have escalated and exploded the last couple of years. Lumber, carpeting, other building materials because of inflation. This is a program that goes back to 1986 when Ronald Reagan created the federal low-income housing tax credit program. Each state is allocated a certain amount based on population. I think Kansas is roughly 8 million this year is their allocation size. Texas, for example, is 80 million, so it's all proportional based on population. As I mentioned, other states have implemented this similar type of program, including Missouri, Colorado, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Other states include Arizona, South Carolina, Georgia, and Wisconsin. I would note that this year, Colorado is renewing their program and trying to double the size of it. Wisconsin is trying to double the size of their program as well. So they've been through the cycle. They've seen this work. They like it, and they're increasing the size of it. What it really does is supercharge and supplement a program that you already have. That's the good news. You have the infrastructure in place from a public side and a private side. The Kansas Housing Resource Corporation administers the program today. They will continue to administer it going forward. And you have a private sector of developers and investors that are already doing this process today. Developers apply, they are scored, they receive the credits, they raise the money, and they build and find occupants. The reason why the credits don't kick in for a number of years is that because you're allocated the credit today, but you have to do the building, and that takes time, and then you've got to find people to live there. That takes time. So that's why the credit doesn't kick in until the buildings are fully occupied. The units are mixed income, and you can blend affordable with market rate. The benefits of stable housing are stable families, better health care, better educational outcomes, and it keeps Kansans in Kansas. We found that all of those states I listed below are net population growers. People are moving, corporations are moving to those places. Georgia's had this program for 20 years, and they are annually ranked as one of the best states to do business in. It's because housing is one of the key issues that people think about when they relocate their businesses. There's also tremendous economic benefits. The National Association of Home Builders says that building 100 apartments in a typical development would create $8.7 million in income, $3.3 million in taxes, and 116 jobs, about half of which are in the construction sector. So this is, I like to say this is good policy and it's good politics, and I support the bill.
Okay. Questions? Do we have questions? Senator Fasco-Doe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, you said that some state, they're reinvesting again because they like it so much. And give me a couple of examples of what they like so much. And then also tell me, if you said we're already doing this, tell me the exact difference of what Senate Bill 369 would do.
Yeah, so you're doing this, you have a certain number of credits that you can allocate for this every year. It just hasn't kept pace with the number of units that you need to build. So what this does is add more in credits so that you can create more output. As I mentioned, because of inflationary costs, lumber is, I think, 2.5 times what it was a year ago. We've all seen the stories. Carpeting prices are through the roof. Things that you just don't think about when it comes to building materials have gone way up. The credit hasn't increased, okay, or it's increased just a little bit. So what we're doing is we're adding to the size of that credit so that we can create more output to keep up with inflation and other things as well. Now, the other states, Colorado and Wisconsin, are just looking to increase the size of their credit. They've been through, Colorado, I think, has been through 2 renewals of the program. This would be a 3rd renewal of the program and an increase in the size of the program. They're very happy. And one of the things they found out is that adding this program has increased not just the affordability in metropolitan areas, but really increased the number of units in rural areas of the state as well.
Well, and this is, you're saying we got the federal tax credits. This is a state tax credit.
Yes, that is correct. Yep.
That's the only difference. And all the states around us have state tax credits.
That is correct. Yes.
We're allotted so many federal tax credits, 9 and 4%. And that's the 7,700,000. And this is proposing doing a similar with the state. So.
Yes. Yeah, so well, I like to say this is really there's a lot of good ideas about housing. What this does is sort of give you a program that works. You can look at other states. I mean, there's 15 other states that do this. So I'm not here to say be the first to try something. I'm here to say other states are doing this. It does work. There's a model out there. It'll increase housing and generate economic benefit.
Well, and President Reagan started it in the 80s, and it's done a good job, at the federal level. So.
It has, and it's enjoyed very bipartisan support nationally. The program, there's been a lot of tax reform since 1986. This program continues to exist and is very popular.
Okay, further questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me get my agenda here. Is it McCain, Bryant, Macklin? Is there? Okay. Sean Miller, I think, is written. Ryan Vinson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's good to be back up here today as the Executive Director of Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. I feel like we're spending a lot of time together these days, and that's wonderful to be talking about housing and investment for our state. Senator Reichman, once again, I'm up here to offer enthusiastic, neutral testimony on behalf of Senate Bill 369. KHRC, as mentioned, has administered the Housing Tax Credit Program on behalf of the state of Kansas for many years. It's a wonderful, successful model that, as shared, does enjoy bipartisan support from our communities, our developers, and our tenants who are enjoying safe, healthy, accessible housing around the state through the investments achieved through the program. Every year, I just want to highlight some numbers so to make sure that you as the committee have the information you need. We receive approximately $7.6 million in annual tax credits from the Department of Treasury, which equates to about $76 million worth of tax credits because it's a 10-year credit that we award every year. It's awarded in accordance with our qualified allocation plan. Our most recent awards are available on our website. The beauty of the program is that we're able to cover about 2/3 of the cost of the housing development, which allows for developments to be done in places that are not seeing new housing or even rehabbed housing around the state. On average, we currently receive about $3 in requests for every $1 in credit that we can award. In 2021 alone, we denied credit to 12 housing developments that were already meeting our eligibility criteria, which means but for having enough housing tax credits to award, we would have 12 more developments being built in our state that would provide 452 units of affordable housing. That's 247 units of new housing. That's 205 units of rehab. And I should note that historically, our housing tax credit program has developed about half of our housing in rural communities. So I think that's important to remember because we talked earlier about how rural communities have an even higher bar to get housing developed. A couple pieces of information that may be helpful in your considerations on this bill. As mentioned, a number of states do already have the state housing tax credit. The benefits of a state housing credit that are coupled with the federal credit are that we're utilizing an existing program. We have an existing infrastructure, partners around the state. We've got staff that are trained and knowledgeable. This would provide additional equity for housing development. And we're estimating that if this were to pass, and assuming a pricing of about 50 cents on the dollar, because historically state tax credits sell for a lower pricing than the federal credit. But even with that, we anticipate that we would be able to increase our development awards about 60% for the state of Kansas year after year. There is minimal administrative expense for the state of Kansas. Again, it's using an existing infrastructure and program. KHRC would recoup its costs through the allocation, reservation, and compliance fees that we charge traditionally through our normal federal reservations. It's also utilizing a public-private partnership, and that goes back to the vision of President Reagan and a Democratic-controlled Congress back in the 1980s. They recognize that if the public sector and the private sector are both watching to ensure that the housing is built well, that it's built safely, and that it's serving the people it's intended to serve for the long haul, we're going to have a more successful housing model. We're going to have housing that fits into the communities where it's built, that's maintained, and that ultimately serves those it's intended to serve. And that's why it's been a beautiful program for our state that continues to be a success model statewide. A couple other considerations just for the tax credit. I did talk about the pricing. I think that's something that's important for the state to understand. It does generally sell, from what we've seen, about 50 to 60 cents on the dollar. So that's ultimately a policy decision for you all as policymakers. But the state housing tax credit can be used in conjunction with a number of other programs that KHRC administers. That includes our home rental program. That includes maybe even the National Housing Trust Fund. We've got state resources that we're considering right now in these halls that could be coupled with some of these different programs. With that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may all have, and I appreciate your consideration.
Sure. And we're going to make sure you're neutral on the testimony. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Do we have questions? Questions? Oh, you're off the hook. Easy. Okay, let's get back to our proponents. Allie Devine.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I want to warn my fellow lobbyists, the penance in this committee for being tardy in submission of your written testimony is you get to give it orally. So very quickly, I wanted to reiterate what we've said before. We're supportive of all the tools that can be combined and put within the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. We think it's a well-run organization. Every person that we talk to in working to put together our survey of what's the barrier to rural economic development came back with housing. And they also came back and said to those who were developers that worked with housing, they said, the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation has been fabulous to work with. So that was, for people who are not in the business, that was pretty strong endorsements. So we're here again today asking your support for this bill as yet another tool, and a reminder that we are still going to go for state general fund money of $50 million. So thank you. Be happy to answer questions.
Okay, questions? Not seeing any? We'll move on to, we got a couple virtual. John Shrivery, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Now I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Hello, Chairman Olson and members of the committee. You have my written testimony I provided. All the points in there you can read for yourselves, and a number of these points have already been made by other conferees. My name is John Shively, and I'm the lead coordinator of the Office of Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation for the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth. We promote education, advocacy, and action on issues that affect marginalized persons, and we have a special emphasis on people experiencing poverty. We're testifying today in support of Senate Bill 369 because we believe that it provides an important incentive for investors to provide the necessary funds to modernize Kansas's rental housing stock. As others have mentioned, all of our neighbors currently have state LIHTC programs, and so essentially Kansas is at a competitive disadvantage when it comes being able to attract developers and investment dollars for affordable housing, because why build in Kansas when we can get more credits in another state? We also believe that this policy will create more affordable housing for low-income persons. One of the things we experience here in Leavenworth, and I'm sure is experienced across the state, is the lack of access to housing that is affordable, because the number of affordable apartments is just inadequate compared to the demand. Unfortunately, sometimes affordability also means settling for property conditions that are either inadequate for a person's needs, not having enough space for their family, or sometimes even unsafe and dangerous. This policy will also have the added benefit of allowing renters to save enough income to one day hopefully move into owning single-family homes or duplexes. Many renters today are locked into renting not because they desire to, but rather out of financial necessity. They're unable to save the funds they need for down payments or the other costs related to home ownership. And that's reflected in the most recent Kansas statewide housing needs assessment. That assessment also shows that that the number of renters that are cost burdened, that is paying more than 30% of their income in rent, is on the rise across the state. I just want to add a couple more things. Single family dwellings, townhouses, and duplexes are also LIHTC eligible. So those projects developed with LIHTC funds could be added back to the general housing stock once the compliance period has expired, which is typically 30 years. We also believe that this bill could more generally help the economy and broaden the tax base. It'll create jobs by increasing development, and we hope that it would encourage people to be more willing to relocate and live in Kansas, providing more taxpayers to the state as they choose to live and work in the state. Ultimately, for us, though, housing is an issue of justice. That is a question of what people are due by a society that values and acknowledges human dignity. As St. Pope John Paul II put it best when he said, "We are convinced that a house is much more than a simple roof over one's head. The place where a person creates and lives out his or her life also serves to found in some way that person's deepest identity and his or her relations with the other. And so adequate and affordable housing is a key piece not just of survival, but also to belonging. Our sisters who work with unhoused people tell me that more than anything, people experiencing homelessness feel isolated and lack a sense of community. But these people are part of our communities. They are part of us. They belong to all of us, no matter what their situation. We truly believe that this policy could help provide affordable housing to individuals transitioning out of homelessness. But we also hope that it could prevent situations where people become unhoused in the first place. So we would urge your support for Senate Bill 369, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Do we have questions? Not seeing any. Thank you. Okay, Matt Gillam. I believe you're virtual too, right? Matt, are you on there?
That's correct. Yes. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Good morning. Morning, Chairman Olson, members of the committee. My name is Matt Gillam, and I am the managing partner of Overland Property Group. We're a national development firm who specializes in housing development. We're actually based out of Salina and Leawood, Kansas. In the past 18 years, we've developed a little over 70 different developments, totaling over 3,500 apartment units, with 1,200 of those units being in Kansas. Communities like Olathe, Liberal, Kansas City, Kansas, Garden City, Leawood, Hayes, Manhattan, Great Bend, Coffeyville, Dodge City, and Salina. On top of my work as a developer, I'm also here today as the current president of the Kansas Housing Association, KHA, which we are an organization and alliance with a little over 60 different member groups consisting of for-profit and not-for-profit developers, financial institutions, public housing associations, chambers of commerce, economic development corporations, service providers, individuals, and other organizations that are working to strengthen the state's economic vitality by making safe, decent, and affordable housing available throughout Kansas. Senate Bill number 369 seeks to create a state income housing tax credit program for affordable housing to be administered by KHRC, consistent with the federal requirements for the low-income housing tax credit program. The investment in tax credits at the state level would provide funding sources to developers to facilitate construction of additional affordable housing developments aimed at serving lower and moderate income Kansans. Housing is central to the economic development and job creation and expansion in Kansas. Being a developer myself who grew up in Salina, Kansas, and worked throughout Kansas, we hear consistently from communities this exact problem. The recent statewide housing assessment done clearly demonstrates the true needs for additional housing development in our state. It outlines many of the challenges we have seen over the years and see currently on the ground, and this demand for housing in Kansas cannot simply be met without both public and private partnership. While interest in housing is a priority, Kansas must think outside the box to advance the diversity housing of all types, from affordable to workforce housing, moderate income, single-family, multifamily, and senior housing. Without this bill, we can't adequately and timely address the state's housing shortage. The federal low-income housing tax credit program is a critical part of getting more affordable housing built. This current resource is extremely limited and extremely competitive, being multiple times oversubscribed versus currently available, as you heard from Ryan, the current director of Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. A state tax credit would complement the federal low-income housing tax credit program, directly increasing the number of affordable housing units created. Since the federal low-income housing tax credit program was created in 1986 under the Reagan administration, no other program comes close to housing production. Kansas has had more than 37,000 homes developed or preserved, and more than 85,000 low-income households have been served in Kansas. The demand for units far outweighs the resources we currently have. As prices continue to increase, as you have likely heard, from construction materials, labor, these units and that production will only decrease because of the limited resource. Over 73,000 rental households in Kansas pay more than 50% of their monthly income on rent, leaving far too little for other necessary and needed expenses. Only through this joint effort can we meet the demand and keep rental keep rent affordable in Kansas and Kansans in Kansas. Adding this resource to an already existing program that is well managed and has tremendous oversight will supercharge the program, creating the most units without adding unneeded oversight costs. This is a very successful bipartisan supported program. Myself and KHA travels to DC a couple times a year to advocate for it, and it really is the program that is met with open arms from both sides of the aisle because of its ability to partner public and private. You've heard many times around the state, many states around us do have tax credits at work. I personally work in those states and have seen the direct creation from supercharging the federal credit with the state credit. Again, I thank you for your consideration and opportunity to present testimony to the committee today. The Kansas Housing Association urges you to support Senate Bill number 369. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I know I had to ask one for you. I have kind of two questions. You mentioned that over 50% of the monthly income people were paying, and then we've had other ones saying it was 30% of their income goes to housing. I wonder if you could explain the difference. And then secondly, this may even go to the chairman, why are we so slow getting these tax credits around? All right, thank you.
Just to clarify again, I go back and look here at my research, but again, we're seeing, and we believe that 30% of your gross income is a unhealthy level to be paying on rent, mortgage, anything of that nature. And we're seeing a very high percentage of people that are not only paying over that 30%, but well above that 30%. I think we may be just saying the same thing just through different methods. But, again, being a developer and doing this year in, year out, we've had such a limited resource, and this program has really been our only. So again, where I'm at in Salina, there's been no housing created in Salina. Market rate, the only new housing units that have been created there have been through this program. We currently did the Lee building in Salina. We're able to partner this, put some market rate units in there as well, but that's pretty rare. Communities like Dodge City, Garden City, this has really been the only program that has created new rental housing in their communities. And when we come into town and we're able to, with KHRC's partnership, develop 48 units, they really need 500 or 600 or 700. So we're barely dropping something in the hat here. And this really, I think, creates the opportunity to expand that to more unit creation.
That answer your question?
No, but I do support this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Fascadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Matt, thank you so much for your presentation. So I do represent quite a few people that their monthly income is, I do know a person who gets about $1,200 a month, and their rent is $600 a month. So I don't know the percentage there, but so $600 of that $1,200 goes to their rent. I do know that, or I've seen where home ownership, the person then takes more pride in their communities and neighborhoods, and just, things work out just a little better of home ownership. So what though, you said in your area, the only new ownership has been through methods like this, and do you have a percentage of where you were, the percentage was rental, those renting, and now ownership, and what's the difference? Or
just to clarify, specifically, we specialize in rental type housing. We have done some single family housing development, but is really in a unique case in Salina. So we really specialize in rental type housing. Most of these towns, new housing is not created in the rental side. So that's really what I was speaking to, was there is no rental housing. There's a lot of folks out there that really, when they're starting their lives and at the end of their lives, rental is actually the best method for them, because they're able to not worry about the roof leaking and replacing the roof and these large unexpected expenses when they don't have that ability to pay those. Similarly, we specialize in senior housing, where seniors really are on a fixed income, and there's a saying out there that I really like, which is the larger the home, the less life. Well, you have to take care of your house. You're spending money. You're cleaning it constantly. If there's not a rental opportunity for these people that are young professionals, for instance, in Salina, to move back home after college or after they've gone to a trade school, then they're not going to move back there, because that opportunity doesn't exist. Employers, when people are coming to town, folks may start off in a rental situation, but eventually buy a home. So the fact that rental population isn't there, it doesn't have a healthy economic environment for folks wanting to move to that community or stay in the community. So, for sale, single family homes is certainly a part of this, but, this program in particular, with the oversights, really is a rental type product, and that's what's created through it, which again is what we've seen to be the largest missing part of kind of a lot of these Kansas communities.
Yeah, my guess it's low to moderate income, kind of entry level on and not for everybody, but I mean, like you said, it could be someone later in life too. But it's rent capped for a period of time, and it allows these people to kind of get started and very successful. I mean, I've seen a lot of these projects. I've drove by them and I know what they are. I think they're very successful, and they have them in every state. Every state gets these tax credits, or I think almost every state. Now, what we're talking about is a state tax credit, and all the states around us have it. So I think that right there ought to tell you something. And there's a lot of other states getting them. This would be a good use. As we've heard, like the bills we heard a couple days ago, the need, and there's a lot of different needs we have. So this is another tool I think it'd be very valuable to have. So I don't know. Are there further questions or comments? Okay. Not seeing any. Thank you, Matt. I believe all the rest is written. Is there someone else here that wants to provide oral testimony? Okay. We will then. Are there any further neutrals? Are there any opponents? Not seeing any. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on Senate Bill 369. Okay. We'll step back, and if everybody wants to look at their folder on, let me get it here. 405, that's the bill we heard yesterday, dealing with the cemetery for the Shawnee Indian tribe. Do we have the folder here? Oh, it's inside the testimony? Okay. Where's it at? Oh, first folder? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Here it is, Senate Bill 405. I was just wanting to see what the pleasure of the committee do. Go ahead, Senator Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And like all these bills that come across that deal with Native American land going back reverting back to them, I just wanted to clarify and make sure that there is that deed restriction going back that says there cannot be a casino on this land.
Is that
there is a deed restriction that says there cannot be a casino on the land? And I know that's not in the statute or in the bill, but I know on the previous ones, there was an agreement between the parties. Just want to make sure and clarify that that's still going to be there.
There isn't a specific requirement in the bill for such a condition on the conveyance. There is in the bill a requirement that the Shawnee Tribe provide an easement to the State Historical Society under the Federal Preservation of Historic Sites guidelines, so that there's still a historical preservation easement on the property, which could impact any future possible casino operations on there.
Thank you. And I know that land is so small that it's probably virtually impossible to do. I just wanted to make sure we were being consistent with how we treated these.
Patty, you might just, what I was thinking, because I had a couple people call me on this, because when we did the one last year, they kind of worked things out. Maybe if we could put a letter in the minutes or something saying.
Sure, be happy to. Patty Markley, Markley Strategies, Kansas lobbyist for the Shawnee Tribe. Yeah, there were a couple things based on last year's HB 2408. The agreement with that the Attorney General has to sign off on it. That was also a component of it, as well as that historic preservation easement. It's kind of nice being the second people who do it. We watched how that played out with the Iowa Tribe mission last year, and made sure that we, when Jason drafted it, we made sure we had those components the same as their final document, which was to make those assurances. So hopefully that, is that good?
And I do support that, and if there is no further discussion on anything, I would make a motion that we pass it out favorably for passage.
Got a motion, second by Senator Fasco-Doe. So Senator Hildebrand made the motion. Questions or comments? Not seeing any questions or comments. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Against, nay. It passes. Okay, that's on its way. Just for reference, on Senate Bill 34, I did get a letter back from the budget director, and they said there wouldn't be a effect, I believe, on their budgets. But what I would like to do tomorrow is adopt the amendment and then let that set over the weekend. Then they can get us a corrected actual fiscal note, and they'll remove the old one, put the new one in, and then we'll be able to move forward. Okay? That's Senator Hildebrand. Yeah, yeah. Okay? So we will look at that tomorrow if we got time to put that amendment on, and then just let it set so we can get an updated fiscal note so everybody's satisfied. Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.